Today in the shop, I am covering the steps to build this modern bookcase with removable and customizable cubbies for organization. This build can be upgraded by using double-sided plywood, but OSB is kind of just the theme here in the shop. Oh, and it's also a door. First off, what the heck are going on with these two cabinets? Well, this one is quite literally just full of junk. Nothing special about that one at all. And this one, you unlock these two pins and the door drops down to reveal a cycling nook. These are rollers that you put your bike on top of and ride indoors. And as you can see, they've gotten a lot of use. I used to be pretty big into cycling and now I'm just pretty big. All jokes aside, we bought my wife an e-bike since I ride too fast and I plan to get back on the saddle more this year. The last 3 years we have been building our tiny home. It takes up more than 30 minutes like the TV show says. This will be the second time this cabinet gets a facelift, I think. And technically I am building a bookshelf. Here's how I did it. First I removed the rollers, the hatch hardware, and hinges. Because the carpeting is glued down, I started the demolition from the pretty outside. I removed the wood design, which looks pretty cool if I had a giant sheet of glass to stop dust from sticking to my bike chain. 16,000 screws later, I smashed out the over-engineered bike door, chopped everything up, and added it to my fire pit. I have a lot of dry erase boards, 11 to be exact, none of which are accessible, so I had to use my emergency drawer boards for brainstorming. With those hurdles complete, I moved the stuff in front of my OSB sheets and got to work. I have 2 sacrificial sawhorses I used to cut through and paint on and such. That would be these 2. For the shelves and side construction, I am using 3/4 inch OSB. Be careful where you pick it up from, because you will turn blue. My OSB is tongue and groove, so my first cut is to remove this. For easy measuring, I add 1.5 inches to my measurement on the side I am setting up my fence. I would imagine most circular saws have the same measurement, but double check before making a cut. And remember to set your blade depth to 1/8 inch more than your material for safety and so you don't cut your sawhorses in half completely. I cut 2 slices at 6 inches wide and 6 at 5.5 inches. This is a lazy man's way of making a rabbet to conceal the backboard. My backboard is a 1/2 inch sheet of OSB. If you're using all 3/4 inch pretty plywood, adjust so they have 3/4 of an inch difference. The pieces are now manageable on the miter saw, but let's finish this build by only using a circular saw. Since mine is a door, I'm adding 2 casters to the bottom for added support. I added this leftover lip to hide the casters and make the door appear as though it goes all the way to the ground. I also needed to cut this section out since my bicycle cabinet has a floor. Not necessary for a basic cabinet build. For assembly, I lined out the basic shape of the cabinet, then I began gluing and attaching pieces, using a square to make sure that everything stayed at 90 degrees. I'm using a 1 1/4 inch 18 gauge brad nail. By lining the interior with an additional board, we create the recess for the back support while also providing additional support for the shelving. I assembled the 2 rectangle, not sure what you want to call them, shelves on my workbench. I like sprinkling the raw aesthetics of OSB into my woodshop, so one of the shelves I kept the blue edge showing. And continue construction. I had quite a few scraps and we'll see if a little bit more planning would have allowed me to get this section built from only 1 sheet, and I'm sure it would have. There's a website you can plug in your measurements and it will generate a cut diagram for you. A link is in the description. I also left my tops a little long to cut off later. I did this so I didn't come up a 1/2 inch short or something silly like that. The measurement in the plans is the exact height you need. Measure and cut the back support. Again, I'm using a 1/2 inch sheet of OSB. I dropped the back into place and nailed it down. This is where your cabinet gets 83% of its structure. To hang the door, I reused the old hinge hardware. I taped them to the side so they wouldn't flip open on the wrong side when I'm trying to manhandle things into place. To build these adorable little cubbies, I started with the cleat system to hang them. Set the circular saw angle to 30 degrees. I lined my fence up at 3.5 inches and cut my board. The blade cover handle won't clear my clamps. You can either flip the clamps around or tighten them on the outside of the 2x4 like I did. Then set your saw back to 90 degrees, move your fence to 3 1/4, and make another pass. This will give you 2 equal boards for the cleats, which we will talk about in a little bit. 1 hand and 3 fingers is the backboard height. You can also download the plans for the actual dimensions. Cut the other pieces however you see fit. I trimmed 3 inches off the side corner to make these cubbies not as boxy. I got out the starter pack workbench, just some sawhorses and a sheet of plywood since my rig and everything else is pushed away and I'm not moving everything out of the way for this. Now, I've got 4 bins that I am building for that bottom here, and yep, that's what they look like. Now, to hold those bins onto the actual cabinet, if you pretend that this is a wall, I'm going to attach a cleat system. And what it essentially is I'm going to take one of these 30-degree cuts we had made. It attaches to the cabinet, and then this piece actually will attach to the bin itself. So if this was my bin, this was my cabinet, they lock together like this, and that's how they sit and lock onto the wall. This piece just clicks into here. It holds everything else. It's super easy. It's super nice, helpful. Can hang a ton of stuff from it just using this system. But first we are going to build the bins. So I've got my backs, the sides. This is going to be a nightmare. Backs, the sides, the fronts, and the bottom. I'm going to start with the bottoms because they have to fit. And if they don't fit, yikes. All right. So the bottoms are going to sit just like that, and these fronts are going to sit over the top of everything. So starting out with my bottoms and the sides, just line these guys up so that they are straight. OSB loves to shoot nails in every direction, so just be cautious. Beauty. Repeat it for this side here. Line everything else up. There is our bottom. Putting on the front. I'm going to start with the bottom piece, and then I'm going to align the sides so that they fit. Just a couple nails in each one of them just to hold them together. Sounds like the Titanic is sinking in the background with that thing. All right, and attached my front. I didn't want to line these two up. I wanted it just a little bit beneath for 2 reasons. One, so I can kind of see this aesthetic. Again, I know most people hate it. I like the look of plywood. So cutting off the 3-inch little corner, putting out this front. I still have a ton of bin space in here. These are pretty large bins for me. And I'm going to face my grain, this end, to be this direction, because when it's hanging on the wall, that's the direction I'm always going to see it at. So now we are going to flip everything over. Again, just align, nail in the bottoms. And then I'm going to line up this top part, shoot a few nails. Two of them fired through. There is a direction you can use your nailer. If mine have a little beveled point on the front, and when you shoot them, that's the direction they turn. So mine always turn in this direction. They don't turn this direction. So if you have it like this, and that's actually this little pin point, shows you which direction your bevel goes, and that's why it's like that. Fun fact. Minus those two nails, there is a one completed bin, and then I am going to align this piece, I don't know, just like one of these down, honestly. Probably just to right there, throw a few nails into him. Get a few too many for these. And that is the cleat system. So again, I cut these 44-inch pieces. They are going to go into the cabinet like this, and then that is where this will rest on the board. With my boxes just a wee bit off the cabinet's bottom, I use a level and some nails. Screws. 'Cause I'm only 2 cubbies away from having this job done completely. Math was off a little bit earlier today. I'm only 2 cubbies away. I needed 6 cubbies. I cut 4.